The sound of controlled breathing and sharp exhales shouldn't have stopped Rocco Tang in his tracks. As one of Los Angeles' most feared Korean Mafia bosses, he had witnessed every kind of violence imaginable. But this was different. This was his 8-year-old son, Logan, who hadn't spoken a single word since watching his mother die 18 months ago. Rocco approached the study doorway, expecting to find his son alone with his toy soldiers as usual. Instead, he found something impossible. Logan, standing in a perfect combat stance, small fists positioned with deadly precision, following the movements of their new maid. Riley Schneider. Hana, dull, set. She counted softly in Korean, her own stance flawless, her body moving with the fluidity of a trained operative. But it wasn't just the training that froze Rocco's blood. It was the specific technique she was teaching. The thumb placement, the wrist angle, the exact pressure points she was marking on the practice dummy. These weren't standard Taekwondo forms. This was the Tang family's signature killing method, the one his grandfather had developed in Seoul 50 years ago, the one passed down only to blood members and sworn enforcers. This was how his people eliminated targets in close quarters, without leaving evidence. Logan's face held an expression Rocco hadn't seen since before the assassination. Concentration without terror, determination without trembling. The boy who flinched at footsteps was now grounding his stance with lethal purpose. Rocco's breath caught in his throat. His empire was built on control, on knowing every move before it happened. But watching his broken son find strength in the hands of a woman he barely knew, a woman who somehow possessed his family's most guarded secrets, he felt completely powerless. And for the first time in years, that didn't fill him with rage. It filled him with something far more dangerous, hope and suspicion, tangled together like a loaded gun.
Welcome to Korean Mafia lovers. Hello everyone. Please drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring you these incredible stories. Now, let's find out how this impossible situation began. 3 weeks earlier, Riley Schneider adjusted her simple black dress one final time before stepping through the imposing iron gates of the Tang estate. The mansion rose before her like a fortress, all sleek glass and dark stone perched high in the Hollywood Hills. Security cameras tracked her every step. Armed guards in tailored suits watched from shadowed alcoves. She had cleaned plenty of wealthy homes back east, but nothing quite like this. This wasn't a home. This was a compound. The job posting had been simple enough. Live-in housekeeper needed for private residence. Discretion required. Excellent compensation. What it hadn't mentioned was that the house felt more like a mausoleum than a home, or that the man who owned it carried himself like he could order deaths with a whisper. Rocco Tang was devastatingly handsome in the way that made smart women reckless. Sharp jawline, intense dark eyes that seemed to see straight through lies, and an expensive suit that couldn't quite hide the lean muscle underneath. But it was the way everyone else in the house moved around him. Careful, differential, almost fearful. That told Riley exactly what kind of man she was working for. "Miss Schneider," he said when they met in his office, his English perfect but laced with a Seoul accent. "Your references are impressive. Tell me, what brings you to Los Angeles?" Riley kept her voice steady, her military training serving her well. "Fresh start, Mr. Tang. Sometimes a change of scenery helps you find what you're looking for." Something flickered in his eyes. Understanding, maybe, or calculation. "Indeed," he replied. "You'll be working primarily on the main floor in private quarters. My son—" He paused. For just a moment. The commanding mask slipped, revealing something raw underneath. "My son prefers quiet. Please respect that." "Of course," Riley answered. What he didn't tell her
was that his son barely existed at all. Riley discovered this truth on her second day, when she glimpsed a small figure darting between shadows in the hallway. The boy moved like a ghost. Silent. Quick. Always keeping walls between himself and other people. She caught sight of him properly on her third morning. A beautiful child with his father's dark eyes and delicate features, wearing wrinkled pajamas at noon, clutching a wooden puzzle box like a shield. He watched her from behind a marble column as she folded linens in the main sitting room. Riley had grown up with younger cousins who'd survived trauma. She recognized the signs, the hypervigilance, the way he positioned himself near exits, the careful distance he maintained from all adults. So instead of approaching him or forcing interaction, she simply continued her work. But as she moved, she let her body fall into the rhythms she'd learned years ago during military training. Centered breathing, grounded stances, controlled movements that spoke of inner strength. She didn't realize she was demonstrating a combat stance until she noticed the boy's reflection in the window, his small body, unconsciously mirroring her posture. Their eyes met in the glass. Riley turned slowly, careful not to startle him. "Hey there," she said softly. "That stance is called Jukum Syogi. It means strong foundation." The boy, Logan, she remembered, didn't speak, but he didn't run either. "Want to try it with me?" she asked, settling into the stance again. For a long moment, nothing. Then, so quietly she almost missed it, Logan stepped out from behind the column. He spread, his feet apart, his tiny hands curling into uncertain fists. Riley's heart nearly broke at the sight. This small warrior, trying so hard to be brave. "Perfect," she whispered. "Now breathe with me, in through your nose, out through your mouth." They stood there together in the golden afternoon light, breathing in unison, and Riley felt something shift in the too-quiet house. Logan's shoulders relaxed, incrementally. His stance grew more confident. His breathing steadied. When footsteps echoed from the hallway, he vanished like smoke. But the next morning, he was waiting for her in the study. Riley found him sitting cross-legged on the hardwood floor, his puzzle box beside him, looking up at her with expectant eyes. Without a word, she set down her cleaning supplies and joined him on the ground. "Ready for lesson 2?" she asked. This time, his nod was definite. She started with breathing exercises, then basic stances, keeping everything slow and gentle. Logan absorbed every movement like a sponge. His natural grace was evident, even through his uncertainty. When she showed him how to make a proper fist, he studied her hands with intense concentration before copying the position exactly. "My grandmother taught me to fight when I was about your age," Riley told him as they practiced. "She said it wasn't about hurting people. It was about finding your center, when the world feels shaky." Logan's eyes widened slightly, the most expression she'd seen from him yet. "She sounds wise," came a deep voice from the doorway. Riley's head snapped up to find Rocco Tang watching them, his expression unreadable. Logan immediately shrank back, but he didn't run. "Mr. Tang," Riley began, scrambling to her feet. "I should have asked permission first. I apologize." "No." His voice was quiet, but firm. "Don't apologize." He looked at his son. Something raw and vulnerable flickered across his features. "I haven't seen him this present in 18 months. The weight of that admission hung in the air between them. Riley glanced down at Logan, who was watching his father with careful eyes. "Trauma affects everyone differently," she said carefully. "Sometimes movement helps process what words can't reach." Rocco stepped closer, his gaze never leaving his son. You know about trauma? I know about healing, Riley replied. And I know that healing happens on its own timeline, no one else's. Something passed between them, an understanding that went deeper than words. Rocco crouched down beside Logan, his movements deliberately slow and non-threatening. What do you think, Logan? He asked in Korean, then switched to English. Would you like Miss Riley to teach you more? The boy looked between them, then gave the smallest nod. Rocco's exhale was shaky with relief. Then she will. As he stood to leave, he paused beside Riley. Thank you, he said quietly, for seeing him. After he was gone, Logan tugged on Riley's sleeve. He pointed to the floor. Again? She asked. His smile was tiny, but real. Over the next 2 weeks, Riley's mornings developed a rhythm that had nothing to do with housekeeping, and everything to do with healing. Logan would appear in the study at exactly 9 a.m., sometimes still in pajamas, always carrying his puzzle box, ready for their training sessions. She taught him basic forms, breathing techniques, simple meditation. But more importantly, she taught him that his body could be a source of strength instead of vulnerability. With each passing day, he stood a little taller, spoke a little more, flinched a little less at unexpected sounds. Miss Riley, he said one morning, the first time he'd used her name. Can you teach me to fight? Like you really fight? The question caught her off guard. She glanced toward the window, where Rocco often watched their sessions from his office above. Your father is strong in many ways, Logan, but you know what makes someone truly strong? Logan shook his head. Choosing kindness when you could choose anger. Choosing to protect when you could choose to hurt. Choosing to trust when you're scared. She adjusted his stance gently. That kind of strength is much harder than physical strength. Is that why you help me? Logan asked. Even though you're scared of my appa? Riley blinked in surprise. What makes you think I'm scared of your father? Everyone is scared of him, Logan said matter-of-factly. But you still talk to him like he's just a regular person. Out of the mouths of children. Riley realized the boy was right. She wasn't afraid of Rocco Tang, despite everything about him that should have terrified her. Maybe it was because she'd seen the way he looked at his son. Like Logan was the only thing in the world that mattered. Or maybe it was because underneath all that power and control, she recognized something familiar. A man trying desperately to protect what he loved. Your father isn't scary to me, she said finally. He's just someone who cares about you very much. But that afternoon, everything changed. As Riley was organizing books in the study, Rocco appeared in the doorway. He'd traded his usual business suit for dark jeans and a black shirt, looking younger and somehow more dangerous. Miss Schneider, could I speak with you? She followed him to his private office, a space that screamed wealth and power. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk, and windows overlooking the city sprawled below. But what caught her attention was the collection of photographs on his desk. Logan as a baby, Logan learning to walk, Logan laughing at something off camera. Please sit, Rocco said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. I wanted to discuss Logan's progress. He's doing wonderfully, Riley said. His confidence is growing every day. The nightmares are less frequent, Rocco added quietly. He slept through the night, twice this week. His relief was palpable. His therapist is amazed by the improvement. Children are resilient when they feel safe, Riley replied. Yes, about that. Rocco leaned forward, his intense gaze fixed on her. I need to ask you something, Miss Schneider, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Riley's pulse quickened. Of course. Where did you learn to fight? The question hung between them like a loaded gun. I took classes, Riley said carefully. Self-defense, some martial arts. Rocco's expression didn't change. What style? Krav Maga, some taekwondo, a bit of... What you're teaching my son. Rocco interrupted, his voice dangerously soft. Those aren't standard forms. Riley felt ice slide down her spine. The wrist angles, the pressure points, the breathing patterns. He stood, moving around the desk with predatory grace. Those are Tang family techniques, developed by my grandfather, known only to blood members, and enforcers who've sworn their lives to this organization. He stopped directly in front of her chair. So I will ask you again, Miss Schneider. Where did you learn to fight like one of my people? The background check came back clean. Too clean. Rocco Tang stared at the file on his screen, his jaw tight with suspicion. Riley Schneider, 29 years old, born in Chicago, worked as a housekeeper in Atlanta for the past 2 years. References, glowing, employment history, spotless. But before that, nothing. No college records, no previous addresses, no social media footprint, no parking tickets, no credit card history, no digital trail of any kind. It was as if Riley Schneider hadn't existed before 2 years ago. And in Rocco's world, people who erased their pasts were either running from something or hiding something, usually both. He should have rejected her application immediately, sent her away with the other candidates who'd seemed too eager, too curious, too anything. But something about her interview had stayed with him. The way she walked through his security checkpoint without hesitation. The way she didn't flinch when his guards patted her down, checking for wires or weapons. The way she met his eyes directly. No fear. No calculation. Just calm assessment. Like she was evaluating him, just as much as he was evaluating her. Most people who entered his home wore their nerves like a second skin. Stammering, sweating, eyes darting to the exits. But Riley Schneider had simply stood there, hands relaxed at her sides, waiting for him to speak. Now she sat across from him in his office, wearing a simple black dress, her curly hair pulled back, her expression unreadable. See, your references are impressive, Miss Schneider, Rocco said, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. But I notice there's a gap in your employment history. Riley didn't miss a beat. I took time off to care for my grandmother, she said smoothly. She had dementia. It wasn't the kind of thing that goes on a resume. Plausible, almost too plausible. And when she passed, Rocco pressed. I needed a fresh start, Riley replied. Sometimes grief makes you want to be somewhere new. Somewhere you don't see reminders everywhere you look. Her voice carried just enough emotion to be convincing. But her eyes were too controlled, too steady. This woman had been trained. Rocco would bet his empire on it. The question was, trained by whom? He made his decision. Keep her close. Watch her. Figure out what she was really after. The position is live-in, he said. You'll have your own quarters on the 2nd floor. Meals provided. 2 days off per month. And one very important rule. He leaned forward. My son has been through significant trauma. He doesn't speak to strangers. He doesn't like to be touched. He prefers to be invisible. Rocco's voice roughened despite himself. I need someone who will respect his boundaries, not try to fix him, not pity him, just let him be. Riley held his gaze. "I understand," she said quietly. "Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is give someone space to heal on their own terms." Something in Rocco's chest tightened. "When can you start?" "Today, if you need me to." He nodded once. "My head of security will show you to your quarters." As Riley stood to leave, movement caught Rocco's eye. There, in the corner behind his desk, Logan. His son stood partially hidden by the heavy curtains, his small frame barely visible in the shadows. He clutched his wooden puzzle box against his chest, his dark eyes fixed on the strange woman in his father's office. Riley noticed him immediately, but she didn't gasp, didn't smile too brightly, didn't make any of the mistakes adults usually made with traumatized children. She simply met Logan's gaze, gave him the smallest nod of acknowledgement, and turned toward the door. As she walked past Rocco's desk, she paused. Just for a second. "Your toy soldiers," she said softly, not looking at Logan directly. "That's a good defensive perimeter you've built there. Smart placement." Then she was gone. Rocco turned to look at his son. Logan stared at the empty doorway, his expression unreadable. Then slowly, deliberately, he rearranged 3 of his toy soldiers, creating an opening, a gap in his defenses. For the first time in 18 months, Logan Tang had let someone in. Riley mapped the compound in 3 days. She couldn't help it. Old habits died hard. The security was good, but not perfect. Cameras covered the main gates and driveway, but there was a blind spot near the east wall where the jasmine grew thick. The guards rotated every 4 hours, which meant a 30-second window during shift change. The perimeter sensors were motion-activated, but they didn't account for someone moving slowly enough to avoid triggering the threshold. Not that Riley planned to use any of this information, but her mind cataloged it anyway. The way some people noticed architecture or interior design, she noticed vulnerabilities. What she noticed most was the garden. It sat behind the main house, enclosed by stone walls covered in climbing roses. A fountain stood at the center, silent now, its water long since drained. Flower beds that had once been carefully tended now grew wild and untamed. This had been someone's sanctuary, someone who was no longer here. And every evening at exactly 5:30, Logan came to the garden. He moved like a shadow, slipping through the side door, crossing the overgrown path to a cleared space near the fountain. There, he would stand for a moment, as if gathering courage. Then he would begin. The movements were unmistakable. Taekwondo forms, basic ones, the kind taught to white belts. But everything about his execution was wrong. His stance was too narrow, leaving him off balance. His fists were positioned incorrectly, thumbs tucked inside his fingers in a way that would break them on impact. His breathing was shallow and erratic, robbing the movements of their power. Riley watched from the kitchen window, her chest tightening. Someone had started teaching this child, someone who loved him, and then that someone had been taken away. Now Logan practiced alone, trying to remember, trying to hold on to something that was slipping through his fingers like water. On her 4th evening, Riley made a decision. She took her cleaning supplies to the garden, ostensibly to sweep the stone pathway. Logan was already there, moving through his forms with desperate concentration. Riley worked quietly, staying on the opposite side of the garden, giving him space. But as she swept, she let her own body fall into a basic stance. Horse stance, the foundation of everything. She didn't look at Logan, didn't speak, just breathed, centered her weight, and held the position with perfect alignment. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw him stop. watching. Riley shifted into a front stance, her movements slow and deliberate, then a back stance, each transition flowing like water, each breath synchronized with the motion. For 5 minutes, she moved through the basic forms, not performing, just being. When she finished, she began sweeping again, as if nothing had happened. The next evening, Logan was waiting when she arrived. He stood near the fountain, his puzzle box set carefully on the stone edge. His eyes tracked her as she approached. Riley set down her broom. She moved to the cleared space, settling into horse stance. After a long moment, Logan stepped forward. He tried to mirror her position, but his feet were too close together. His weight distributed wrong. Riley shifted slightly, widening her own stance just a fraction more than necessary, demonstrating without teaching, showing without correcting. Logan adjusted. Slowly, tentatively. Better. Now, Riley said softly, not looking at him directly. Breathe with me. She inhaled deeply through her nose, a 4 count, held it for 2, exhaled through her mouth for 6. Logan's breathing was shaky at first, uneven, but gradually, it synchronized with hers. In, hold, out. The garden filled with the sound of their breathing, the distant hum of the city, the whisper of wind through roses. Riley glanced at Logan. His eyes were closed, his small face peaceful, his hands finally unclenched. For the first time since she'd arrived, she saw something other than fear in his expression. She saw a child, just a child, trying to find his way back to himself. They stood together in the fading light, breathing in unison. 2 people, carrying different wounds, finding unexpected comfort in shared silence. When Logan finally opened his eyes, he looked at Riley directly, and for just a moment, there was life there. A flicker of something that hadn't been extinguished after all. Just buried. Waiting. Tomorrow? He whispered. It was the first word he'd spoken to her. Riley nodded. Tomorrow. By the end of the first week, the garden had become their sanctuary. Every evening at 5:30, Logan would appear, sometimes still in his school clothes, sometimes changed into loose cotton pants that made movement easier, always carrying his puzzle box, which he now set beside the fountain like an offering. Riley taught him the basics: proper stance, controlled breathing, how to move from your center, not just your arms. She was careful, so careful. She showed him only the beginner forms, the safe ones, the ones any taekwondo instructor might teach a child. Nothing from her military training, nothing that would raise questions she couldn't answer. Logan absorbed everything like sunlight after a long winter. His confidence grew with each session. He started asking questions, making small jokes, even laughing once, when he lost his balance and tumbled into the grass. Rocco watched from his office window, and Riley could feel his gaze. Protective, grateful, but always watching. Then came the afternoon that changed everything. They were practicing basic blocks when Logan stopped mid-movement. "Miss Riley," he said, his voice hesitant. "Can you teach me the real way?" Riley lowered her arms. "What do you mean?" "The way you really fight," Logan said. "Not the practice way. The way that would actually work if someone tried to hurt me again." The garden suddenly felt too quiet. "Logan, these forms are real. They work when—" "No, they don't." His voice was small but firm. "My Uma taught me some of these before, and they didn't work when the bad men came. She tried to fight them and... His voice cracked. Riley's heart broke. She knelt down to his level. Logan, what happened to your mother wasn't because the techniques don't work. It was because... Please, he whispered. Just show me once, so I know I'm learning something real. So I know I could protect myself. If they come back. Every instinct told her to refuse, to redirect, to keep the walls up. But the look in his eyes, the desperate need to feel safe again. She made a choice. Okay, Riley said quietly, just once. She stood, centering herself. This is called a disable and disengage strike, she began. You use it when someone grabs you and you need to create distance fast. She moved into position. The thumb placement here. She demonstrated, angling her wrist just so. You target the radial nerve, right at this pressure point. 45-degree angle, sharp upward thrust, then you pivot your hip for maximum force and... She executed the strike in slow motion, precise, efficient, lethal in its simplicity. The exact technique she'd used in Vladivostok, the one that had saved her life. She didn't see Rocco standing in the doorway, didn't see the color drain from his face, didn't see his hand grip the doorframe, knuckles white. Because that strike, that exact thumb placement, wrist angle, pivot. That was Tang Sung-ho's signature disabling technique, his grandfather's creation, taught only to family enforcers, known only to people who'd sworn blood oaths to the organization. Rocco felt ice flood his veins. He watched Riley guide Logan through the motion, her voice gentle, her movements precise. Watched his son execute a strike that shouldn't exist outside the Tang family vault. Who was this woman? He backed away silently, his mind racing. Upstairs in his office, Rocco pulled up Riley's file again. This time, he didn't just review it. He tore it apart. He called in favors from contacts in Chicago, ran her photo through facial recognition databases, cross-referenced her fingerprints from the water glass she'd used during her interview. Nothing. No matches. No records. Riley Schneider was a ghost, which meant she was either intelligence, law enforcement, or someone far more dangerous, a plant from a rival family, an assassin gathering information, a threat he'd welcomed into his home, into his son's life. Rocco stared at the security feed from the garden, watched Riley laughing as Logan practiced the strike again, watched his son smile, truly smile, for the first time in 18 months. He reached for his phone, paused. If she was a threat, she was the most patient one he'd ever encountered. No one spent 2 weeks teaching a traumatized child to breathe, just to gather intelligence. But that technique... Rocco replayed the footage, watched her execute the strike frame by frame. Perfect form, perfect targeting, perfect everything. She wasn't faking expertise, she was concealing it. Tomorrow, he would confront her. Tonight, he would find out exactly who Riley Schneider really was, and if she posed any threat to Logan. Rocco's expression hardened. Ghost or not, she would disappear. Permanently. Rocco waited until Logan was asleep. Then he found Riley in the kitchen, preparing tea. Her movements calm and unhurried. She didn't startle when he entered. Didn't even turn around. "You wanted to talk to me," she said quietly. "I've been expecting this." So she knew he'd been watching. Of course she did. "My office," Rocco said. "Now." She followed him without protest. Sat in the chair across from his desk with that same infuriating composure. Rocco didn't sit. He stood, arms crossed, every inch the interrogator. "Where did you learn that strike?" he demanded. "The one you showed Logan today?" Riley met his gaze steadily. "Self-defense classes. Don't lie to me. I am not. That technique." Rocco interrupted, his voice dropping to something dangerous. That exact thumb placement, that wrist angle, that pivot. Do you know what that is? Riley said nothing. That's a Tang family disabling strike, Rocco continued, created by my grandfather, known only to sworn members of this organization. So I will ask you one more time, Miss Schneider. He leaned forward, palms flat on the desk. Where did you learn to fight like one of my people? The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled taut. I worked private security overseas, Riley said finally. Contractors teach each other techniques. I learned from someone who learned from someone. I didn't know it had a family name attached to it. What company? One that doesn't exist anymore. Convenient. Rocco, she said, using his first name for the first time. If I were here to hurt you or Logan, would I be teaching him to breathe? Would I be helping him sleep through the night? Would I be doing anything except what I've been doing? She stood, matching his intensity. I have a past I don't talk about. You have a present you don't talk about. Can we call it even? Rocco wanted to say no, wanted to drag the truth out of her by any means necessary. But Logan had spoken 12 full sentences yesterday, had made eye contact with the tutor, had eaten breakfast without nightmares beforehand. Rocco exhaled slowly. I'm increasing security, he said. You'll be monitored more closely. I expected nothing less. And Riley. His voice softened slightly. If I find out you're lying about anything that puts my son at risk. You won't have to find out, she interrupted, because I would never let anything hurt that boy. The conviction in her voice was absolute. Rocco nodded once. Dismissed. But he didn't increase distance. He increased observation. The next afternoon, Rocco stood in the hallway outside the study, listening. Inside, Riley was teaching Logan. Strength isn't about how hard you can hit, she was saying. Real strength is about control. But what if someone attacks me? Logan asked. Then you defend yourself, Riley replied. But there's a difference between defending and destroying. You fight to protect, not to punish. You fight to create safety, not to cause pain. A pause. My Appa fights to cause pain, Logan said quietly. I hear the men talking. They say he's dangerous. Rocco's chest tightened. Your father, Riley said carefully. Your father does what he thinks he must, to keep you safe. Sometimes the world forces us into corners, and we fight our way out the only way we know how. Is that what happened to you? Logan asked. Yes. Do you still fight that way? Not anymore, Riley said softly. Now I choose a different kind of strength, the kind your Umma would have wanted you to have. Rocco heard rustling paper. I drew a picture, Logan said. Want to see? I'd love to. That's you, and me, and Appa. We're protecting our castle from the bad guys. See? We're all warriors together? Riley's voice was thick with emotion. This is beautiful, Logan. Do you think Appa would like it? I think your Appa would treasure it. Rocco stepped away from the door, his throat tight, his eyes burning. That evening, Logan brought him the drawing, placed it on his desk with careful hands. I made this, Logan said. Miss Riley helped me with the castle. Rocco stared at the crayon figures. 3 warriors, standing together. A family. It's perfect, he whispered. Logan smiled, then threw his arms around Rocco's neck. The first hug in 18 months. Rocco held his son, breathing in the scent of his hair. And over Logan's shoulder, he saw Riley standing in the doorway. She wasn't smiling, but her eyes held something he recognized. The fierce protectiveness of someone who decided this child was worth dying for. Whatever her secrets, whatever her past. In that moment, Rocco made a choice. He would trust her, at least, until she gave him a reason not to. The car backfired 3 blocks away, but to Logan, it was gunfire. Riley was folding laundry in the hallway when she heard the sound, sharp, sudden, echoing off the hills. Then, Logan's scream. She dropped everything and ran. Found his bedroom empty, bathroom empty, the playroom. Then she heard it. Quiet sobbing coming from the master suite. Rocco's room. Riley pushed through the door. The space was immaculate, masculine, dominated by dark wood and floor-to-ceiling windows, but she barely noticed, because the sound was coming from the walk-in closet. The door was cracked open. Inside, she could see women's clothes still hanging, untouched, a shrine to someone who was gone. "Logan," Riley called softly. The sobbing stopped, replaced by ragged breathing. She approached slowly, pushed the door open wider. Logan was wedged into the back corner, behind evening gowns and silk dresses. His knees pulled to his chest, his hands over his ears, rocking. "The bad men," he was whispering. "The bad men are back. Umma, the bad men." Riley's heart shattered. Most people would have tried to coax him out, used soothing words and gentle hands, tried to pull him back to reality. Riley climbed into the closet instead. She squeezed into the small space beside him, surrounded by the scent of perfume and memories, her shoulder pressed against his. Logan flinched, then stilled. "I hear them too sometimes," Riley said quietly. "The gunfire. Even when it's just a car, or fireworks, or a door slamming." Logan's breathing hitched. "I was in a place once where the bad men came every day," she continued. "A place where I had to sleep with my eyes open, where I had to learn to fight, just to survive." She swallowed hard. "I saw things, Logan, things I can't unsee, things that wake me up at night, just like they wake you up." "You have nightmares too?" he whispered. "All the time. Do they ever stop?" Riley was quiet for a moment. "They get quieter," she said honestly. "Not gone, but quieter, especially when you're somewhere safe, with people who protect you." Logan turned to look at her, his face wet with tears, his eyes red and exhausted. "Are you safe here?" he asked. "Yes." "Am I safe here?" Riley met his gaze. "Yes. But what if the bad men come back? What if they find us? What if—" Riley took his small hand in hers. "Then I will stop them," she said simply. "Not because I'm perfect, not because I'm not scared, but because protecting people like you, people who deserve to feel safe. That's why I learned to fight in the first place." Logan's lip trembled. "Promise?" "I promise," Riley said. "No one will hurt you while I'm here. No one." Logan collapsed against her, his small body shaking with sobs. Riley wrapped her arms around him. Let him cry. Let him break. Because sometimes, breaking was the first step to healing. Rocco stood frozen in the bedroom doorway. He'd come running when he heard Logan's scream, had torn through the house, heart in his throat, expecting the worst. Instead, he found his son in his dead wife's closet, and the mysterious woman who'd invaded their lives, holding Logan like he was made of glass. Rocco listened to every word. Heard Riley's confession, her nightmares, her past trauma, her promise to protect his son. And something inside him shifted. This wasn't the careful distance of an employee. This wasn't even the compassion of a caregiver. This was personal. Riley had claimed Logan as hers to protect. And watching her, covered in his son's tears, whispering promises in the dark, Rocco felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel since his wife died. Desire. Not just physical, though that was there too, but something deeper, more dangerous. The desire to let someone in, to share the weight, to trust another person with the most precious thing in his world. It terrified him, because everyone he trusted eventually left, or was taken. But Riley climbed into closets. Riley made promises she seemed willing to die to keep. Riley looked at his broken son and saw someone worth saving. In the closet, Logan's breathing had steadied. "Miss Riley?" he whispered. "Yes." "Will you stay with me tonight? I'm scared to be alone." "Of course," Riley said without hesitation. "I'll stay as long as you need." Rocco stepped back silently, left them there together, went to his office, stared at Riley's file on his screen. "Who are you?" he whispered to the empty room. "And why does it feel like you've always been meant to be here?" He closed the file. Tomorrow, he would increase surveillance. Tomorrow, he would dig deeper. Tonight, he would be grateful that someone, anyone, could reach his son in the dark, even if that someone was a beautiful mystery, with secrets that could destroy them all. The farmer's market was Riley's one escape. Every Saturday morning, while Logan had his tutoring session, she would walk the 3 blocks down the hill, browse the vegetable stands, breathe air that didn't taste like surveillance and secrets. She was examining heirloom tomatoes when she felt it. The prickle at the back of her neck, the weight of a predator's gaze. Someone was watching her. Riley didn't turn, didn't react, just picked up a tomato, examining it like it was the most important thing in the world. Then a voice beside her, low, accented, unmistakable. Still buying groceries like a civilian. Riley Volkov. Old habits die hard, no? Her blood turned to ice. She set down the tomato slowly, turned to face the man who'd spoken. He was mid-40s, expensive suit, cold blue eyes that held the kind of emptiness that came from killing without remorse. Russian. "You have me confused with someone else," Riley said evenly. The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Do I? Former Defense Intelligence Agency, Vladivostok Operation, 2014. You dismantled the Morozov weapons network, cost us $40 million, and 12 men." He picked up a tomato, examined it. "The Morozov family. We have long memories." Riley's heart hammered against her ribs, but her voice stayed steady. "That was a lifetime ago." "Was it?" "Because it seems you simply traded one dangerous man for another." The Russian gestured vaguely toward the hills. Rocco Tang. Interesting choice for someone trying to disappear. "What do you want?" Riley asked quietly. "The same thing you want. Peace." He set down the tomato. "Leave the Tang family. Tonight. Disappear again. We will forget we ever found you." "And if I don't?" The man's smile vanished. "Then we burn everything you care about. The house. The boy. The man who thinks he can protect you." He leaned closer. "We know about the garden sessions. We know the child is healing. We know you have grown attached." His voice dropped to a whisper. "So I ask you, Riley Volkov, is one traumatized boy worth starting a war?" Then he was gone, dissolved into the crowd like smoke. Riley stood frozen among the vegetables, her carefully constructed life crumbling. She told Rocco everything that afternoon. They stood in his office, the door locked, his face growing darker with every word. "Your real name is Volkov," he said when she finished. "Was Volkov," Riley corrected. "I changed it legally 2 years ago." "You were intelligence?" "Yes." You dismantled a Russian weapons network. Yes. And you thought, what? That they wouldn't find you? That you could just play housekeeper and no one would notice? Rocco's voice was rising. You brought this to my home, to my son. I didn't know they were tracking me. You should have told me. Rocco slammed his hand on the desk. The first goddamn day you should have told me what you were. I was trying to disappear, Riley shot back. Would you have hired me if you knew? Would you have let me anywhere near Logan? No, Rocco admitted, but at least I would have been prepared. At least I would have known what was coming. I'm sorry. Sorry. Rocco crossed the room in 3 strides. Sorry doesn't protect my son. Sorry doesn't stop the Russians from burning my house down. Sorry doesn't... I will leave, Riley interrupted. Tonight. They want me gone. So you'll go. Logan will be safe and you can... No. The word came out harsh. Absolute. You're not leaving. Rocco. They threatened. I don't care what they threatened, he said. You're not running. Not from this. His jaw clenched. You don't get to fix my son, make him smile again, make him feel safe, then disappear the moment it gets dangerous. This isn't about me fixing anything, Riley said. This is about keeping Logan alive. Logan needs you. He needs to be safe more. He needs both. Rocco stepped closer. So close she could feel the heat radiating off him. Why didn't you trust me? He asked quietly. The question hit harder than anger. Because trust gets people killed, Riley whispered. Everyone I ever trusted. Everyone I ever cared about. Her voice cracked. They paid for my mistakes. So you thought you'd carry this alone? Yes. Stupid. Rocco breathed. Then his mouth was on hers. The kiss was furious, desperate. All the fear and anger and desire they'd been dancing around for weeks, exploding. Riley kissed him back just as hard, her hands fisting in his shirt, his hands tangling in her hair. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Rocco pressed his forehead to hers. We're in this together now, he said. No more secrets, no more running. The Russians. Let them come, Rocco said. I'll handle the Russians. His eyes burned into hers. But you stay. Riley nodded, unable to speak. Because for the first time in years, she wasn't facing the darkness alone. The intelligence came back in 48 hours. Rocco sat in his office, staring at the reports spread across his desk, his blood running cold. The Morozov family hadn't just found Riley by accident. They'd been hunting her for 2 years, systematically, patiently, tracking financial records, facial recognition hits, monitoring known associates. And 3 weeks ago, someone had given them her exact location. Someone inside Rocco's organization. He picked up his phone, called his head of security. I want everyone vetted again, he said quietly. Phone records, financial transactions, every communication in and out. Someone sold us out. I want to know who. Sir, how deep should we? As deep as it takes. Rocco interrupted. And double the security on Logan's school. Effective immediately. He hung up, stared at the photo on his desk. Logan smiling. Finally healing. If the Russians wanted war, Rocco would give them annihilation. The attack came during afternoon pickup. Riley was early, as always, parked across from the private school, watching parents arrive in their expensive cars. Logan would be out in 5 minutes. Then she saw them. 2 black SUVs, pulling into the parking lot too fast, windows tinted too dark. Wrong, everything about them was wrong. Riley was out of her car before they stopped moving. The doors opened. 5 men emerged, tactical gear under long coats, moving with military precision toward the school entrance, where children were starting to stream out. No. Riley broke into a run. "Gun!" one of the men shouted in Russian, seeing her coming. He reached inside his coat. Riley hit him before the weapon cleared leather. Disabling strike to the radial nerve, exactly the way she'd shown Logan. The man's arm went dead. She swept his legs, drove her elbow into his temple as he fell. The other four turned, startled that their ambush had been ambushed. Riley didn't give them time to think. She moved like water, like violence, like everything she'd been trained to be. A kick to one man's knee, shattering it. A palm strikes another's throat, crushing his windpipe. Disarm, redirect, control. Parents screamed, children scattered. But Riley kept herself between the attackers and the school, a wall of controlled fury. Then she saw him. Logan, standing frozen in the doorway, watching her. Their eyes met. And Riley saw the recognition, the understanding. This was who she really was. Not the gentle teacher. Not the patient healer. A weapon. The fifth man raised his gun, aimed at Logan. Riley moved. She closed the distance in 3 strides, grabbed his wrist, twisted. The gun discharged into the pavement. She broke his arm at the elbow, used his body as a shield as his partner fired, then dropped him, surging forward, and ended it. When Rocco's men arrived 90 seconds later, it was over. 5 Russian operatives, unconscious or writhing on the ground, and Riley, standing over them, breathing hard, blood on her knuckles that wasn't hers. Logan ran to her, threw his arms around her waist. "You're like Appa," he whispered. "You're a warrior too." Riley held him tight. Her hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Rocco interrogated the one who could still talk. In the basement of a warehouse he owned, with methods that left no visible marks. The Russian broke in 20 minutes. "Morozov sent us." He gasped. "We had inside information, knew the boy's schedule, knew the maid would be there. 2 birds, 1 stone." "Who gave you the information?" Rocco demanded. "Your advisor." The man spat blood. "Park Jin-woo. He's been feeding us intelligence for months." Rocco's world tilted. Jin-woo, his father's oldest friend, his most trusted counselor, the man who'd held Logan as a baby. No. But even as he denied it, he knew it was true. They found Jin-woo in his office, calm, waiting. "How long have you known?" the old man asked. 20 minutes, Rocco said quietly. Silence. "Why?" Rocco finally asked. Jin-woo looked up. His eyes were hollow, empty. "My son died 2 years ago," he said, "caught in crossfire between your family and the Seo clan. He was 16. His voice cracked. 16 years old, buying noodles. Wrong place, wrong time. Your war." "Jin-woo," Rocco breathed. "I didn't want revenge against you," the old man continued. "I wanted revenge against this life, this world we built, this poison we call honor." He stood. "So I decided to burn it all down. Let the Russians tear you apart from inside. Watch the empire crumble." He smiled bitterly. "But then the maid came, and your son started healing, and I realized..." His smile faded. "Even my revenge couldn't kill hope." Rocco stared at the man who'd helped raise him, and saw only a stranger. "You put my son in danger," Rocco said softly. "I know. You betrayed everything we built. I know." Rocco raised his gun. Jin-woo closed his eyes. "Make it quick," he whispered, "for your father's sake." Rocco's hand trembled. Then he lowered the weapon. "No," he said. "You're going to live with what you've done." He turned to his guards. "Take him, exile. If I ever see him again, kill him on sight. As they dragged Jin-woo away, Rocco stood alone. His empire was compromised, his trust shattered, his son targeted. And the woman who'd saved them all was exactly as dangerous as he'd feared, and exactly as essential as he'd hoped. The message came at midnight, hand-delivered by a courier who disappeared before Rocco's guards could question him. Inside the envelope, a single sheet of paper, and a photograph of Logan, leaving school that morning. Rocco read the message 3 times. Each time, his rage grew colder. Riley Volkov in exchange for peace, or total war. Not just against the Tang organization, but against every business, every property, every person under Tang protection. Schools, hospitals, legitimate operations, civilian employees. The Morozov family would burn it all, and they gave him 48 hours to decide. Rocco called his war council. 20 men gathered in his private conference room, his best strategists, his most lethal enforcers. "We fortify every position," his lieutenant said. "Double the guards at all locations. Move families to safe houses. Prepare for siege. They have resources in Moscow," another added. "This won't be quick. Could last months, maybe years." "Casualties?" Rocco asked quietly. The room fell silent. "Conservative estimate," his intelligence officer finally said. 30 to 40% losses, first month alone. Rocco closed his eyes. 30 to 40%. Fathers, brothers, sons. All because he refused to surrender one woman. "Do it," he said. "Prepare for war." Riley was waiting in his office when the meeting ended. She'd heard everything through the security feed. "There's another option," she said quietly. "No. Rocco. Listen to me." "I said no," he repeated, his voice hard, final. Riley stood, crossed to him. 40% casualties, she said. Dozens of families destroyed, children losing fathers. She took his hand. "All to protect me. Someone who lied to you, someone who brought this danger to your door. Someone I love." Rocco interrupted. The words hung between them. Raw, exposed. "Riley," Rocco continued, his voice breaking. "I have been falling for you since the moment you climbed into that closet with my son. Since you taught him to breathe again. Since you looked at our broken family and decided we were worth saving." He cupped her face. "So no. You don't get to sacrifice yourself. You don't get to walk into their hands thinking it's noble." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "You stay here with us, where you belong." Tears slid down Riley's face. "I stayed," she whispered, "not because I was hiding, not because I needed the job." She pressed her hand over his heart. "I stayed because for the first time in my life, I found something worth fighting for. Someone worth fighting for." She looked up at him. 2 someones. Rocco kissed her. Desperate, gentle, pouring everything he couldn't say into that moment. When they broke apart, a small voice came from the doorway. "Are you leaving?" They turned. Logan stood there in his pajamas, his puzzle box clutched to his chest, his eyes wide and terrified. "I heard the men talking," he said. "About the Russians, about Miss Riley going away." His voice cracked. "Everyone leaves," he whispered. Uma left. Jin-woo Samchin left. Tears streamed down his face. "Please don't leave me too. Please, I'll be good. I'll be quiet. I'll be whatever you want. Just, please, don't go." Riley dropped to her knees, opened her arms. Logan ran to her. She held him tight. This boy who'd become her whole world. "I'm not going anywhere," she promised. Rocco knelt beside them, wrapped his arms around them both. "None of us are going anywhere," he said firmly. "We're a family, and families protect each other." "But the bad men," Logan sobbed. "Let them come," Rocco said. He looked at Riley over Logan's head. "We'll face them together." Riley nodded. "Together." Logan pulled back slightly, looked between them. "Promise?" he asked. "Both of you?" Rocco took Logan's hand, then Riley's, creating a circle. "I promise," Rocco said. "I promise," Riley echoed. Logan took a shaky breath. "Then, can we be a real family? Like, forever?" Rocco's throat tightened. "Yes," he whispered, "forever." Logan wrapped his arms around both of them. And in that moment, surrounded by impossible choices and approaching war, they made the only choice that mattered: each other. Later, after Logan finally fell asleep between them on the couch, Rocco stared at the message on his desk. 48 hours. He picked up his phone. But he wasn't calling to surrender. He was calling to negotiate. Because Rocco Tang hadn't built an empire by following other people's rules. And he wasn't about to start now. Not when everything he loved was finally, within reach. The meeting took place on neutral ground. A private room in a downtown hotel. No weapons, no guards inside. Just Rocco Tang and Dmitry Morozov, two men who understood power. "You come to surrender the woman?" Dmitry asked, his English thick with accent. Rocco smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "I come to offer you something better." He slid a folder across the table. "The East Coast territories," Rocco said. "Shipping routes, distribution networks, legitimate import businesses. Everything your family has wanted for 5 years." Dmitry didn't touch the folder. "In exchange for one woman? She must be very special." "She is," Rocco said simply. "And so is my son." He leaned forward. "You want revenge?" "I understand, but revenge is expensive. War with me will cost you millions, years of your life, dozens of your men." His voice dropped. "Or, you take what I've offered, expand your empire peacefully, and gain something even more valuable." "What is that?" Dmitry asked. "My goodwill," Rocco replied. He opened a second folder. Inside, detailed intelligence on the SEO clan, the Yakuza networks, the cartel movements through the Southwest. "Enemies we both share," Rocco continued. "Information I've spent years gathering. Yours, if we make peace." Dmitry studied the documents, his expression unreadable. "And you?" he finally asked. "What do you get? Besides keeping the woman?" "My family," Rocco said. "My freedom." He sat back. "I'm retiring from active leadership. My cousin will take over operations. I'll remain a silent partner, consulting only." "So the great Rocco Tang runs away?" Dmitry scoffed. "No," Rocco said quietly. "The great Rocco Tang finally understands what he's been fighting for." Silence stretched between them. Then Dmitry smiled, a real smile this time. "Your father would be ashamed," he said. "But your son will thank you." He extended his hand. "We have a deal." Rocco shook it. "One condition," Dmitry added. "The woman, Riley Volkov, she ever returns to our world, the deal is void." "She won't," Rocco promised. "She's done running, and she's done fighting your wars. Then we are finished here." As Rocco left the hotel, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. A weight he'd carried since his father died, since his wife was murdered, since Logan stopped speaking. For the first time in years, he could breathe. 1 year later, the ceremony was small. Just Logan, Rocco's cousin, and 3 trusted friends who'd become family. Riley wore a simple white dress. No veil, no elaborate decorations. Just her, standing in the garden where she'd first taught Logan to breathe. Rocco wore a dark suit, no tie, looking at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. When Logan walked her down the aisle, she cried. When Rocco promised to love and protect her, she believed him. And when they kissed as husband and wife, Logan cheered so loudly, the neighbors 3 houses over heard him. That night, Rocco Tang, former Mafia boss, became simply Rocco. Husband, father, owner of a legitimate security consulting firm, and the happiest he'd ever been. 3 years later, the regional tournament was packed, hundreds of children in crisp white uniforms, parents filming on phones, the smell of floor mats and nervous energy. Rocco sat in the bleachers, his hand wrapped around Riley's, her belly round with their daughter, due in 6 weeks. On the mat below, Logan Tang, now 12 years old, faced his opponent. Tall for his age, confident, eyes sharp and focused. Nothing like the ghost boy he'd been. The match began. Logan moved like water, defensive at first, reading his opponent. Then, seeing an opening, he struck. Sasang Sujirogi. The double punch. Perfect thumb placement, perfect wrist angle, perfect pivot. The technique that had started everything. His opponent stumbled back. The referee called the point. The crowd erupted. Logan had won his division. Riley squeezed Rocco's hand. Tears streamed down her face. "He's beautiful," she whispered. "He is." Rocco agreed, his own voice thick. After the medals ceremony, Logan ran to them, his black belt tied perfectly, his smile brighter than the sun. "Did you see? Did you see?" he asked breathlessly. "I used the Sesang Sujirigi, just like you taught me." "Mom? Mom?" Riley had been mom for 2 years now, but it still made her heart stop every time. "You were perfect," she said, pulling him into a hug. Logan looked down at her belly. "Is my sister gonna learn too?" he asked. "Can I teach her, like you taught me?" Rocco knelt beside them. "Of course you can," he said. "You'll be the best teacher." Logan beamed. "I'm gonna teach her everything, how to be strong, how to be brave, how to protect people who need help." He looked between his parents, just like our family does. That evening, back home in their house, no longer a fortress, just a home. Riley stood in the garden, the same garden where she'd first seen a broken boy, where she'd taught him to breathe, where she'd fallen in love with his father. Rocco came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her and their unborn daughter. "What are you thinking?" he asked softly. Riley leaned back against him. "That I spent years fighting for countries, for causes, for missions I barely believed in." She placed her hands over his. "But this family, this life, this is what I was always meant to fight for." Rocco kissed her temple. "I spent years building an empire," he said, thinking power meant control, thinking strength meant fear. He turned her to face him. "But you taught me something better." "What's that?" Riley asked. "That true power isn't controlling an empire." He cupped her face gently. "It's protecting the people who taught you how to live, instead of just survive." Inside, Logan was setting the table, humming to himself, arranging toy soldiers, not in defensive positions anymore, but in a circle, protecting something precious in the center. Outside, Rocco and Riley held each other. 2 warriors who'd laid down their weapons, not in surrender, but in victory. Because they'd finally found what they'd both been searching for. Home. Family. peace, and a love worth more than any empire. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If you loved this story, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear about second chances and found families. Drop a comment telling us your favorite moment. And remember, true strength isn't about how hard you fight. It's about what and who you choose to fight for. Until next time, from Korean Mafia lovers.